handful of you. Great. So have you guys already downloaded the Goose Chase app on your phone? Okay, so you know how to work with it. Okay, great. So I don't need to go through the steps here, but just so you know, please don't leave at the end of the presentation because we're going to hand out some evaluations. If you're here for a mandatory basis or you want to earn link loot and maybe it doesn't work out with the app, these evaluations will be collected at the end of the presentation so we can inform your departments or organizations that you did attend this workshop and you can receive the credit that you're here for, okay? So please make sure to fill out those evaluations and return it to me. So the goals for this workshop, no pun intended, are to discuss what the Student Academic Resource Center has to offer to students here on campus. Then we're going to talk about some of the common goals that incoming UCF students may have. Then we're also going to discuss how we can set those goals in a way that's smart, right? And so how many of you have heard of SMART goals before? A few of you. So we're going to go over what's actually called SMARTest goals. So there are 3 extra letters to keep in mind. And then we'll leave some time towards the end for questions and answers and then evaluations, of course. So for SARC services, we offer a plethora of academic resources for students on campus. We have peer tutoring, which is group-based collaborative learning. So it's your typical kind of tutoring session where you have one tutor assigned for a subject. There are 3 tutoring labs on campus, so the tutors would be set up in those labs at different days and times. We typically offer tutoring for STEM and business courses, not so much for the math courses because the math lab offers math tutoring. But essentially it's your traditional tutoring, but it's not one-on-one, it is group-based. And then we also have supplemental instruction, which is a little bit different than tutoring because the SI leaders are the ones that attend the lectures with you, and then they actually host study sessions for that class and guide you through the material as the semester progresses. So that's just something to keep in mind. We also have our Academic Success Workshop series that we host every fall, spring, and summer, and you're sitting in one right now. So I guess you kind of know what a workshop is. But we go over topics like goal setting, study skills, test anxiety, note-taking, stuff of that nature, and most of them are live streamed. We also have what's called learning skills consultations, which are one-on-one appointments in which you can sit with a learning specialist and address any of your academic barriers. So if you have an issue with time management, you can make a one-on-one appointment with a learning specialist. I am one. And we can talk about what's holding you back essentially from being an effective time manager, and then we can build your time management schedule or think about some creative and out-of-the-box ways to manage your time more effectively. We also have what's called ACE coaching. Now, ACE coaching is ongoing peer mentoring that happens about once a month with someone who's also an undergraduate student but who is doing well academically. And they're kind of like your accountability system. So you join this program for free and you just meet up with them and talk about your progress as your semester goes on. We also have online resources. So as I mentioned, our workshops are all live streamed. So you can always go to SARC Online and you can review those workshops that have been live streamed because we do record them. We also have what's called Online Peer-Assisted Learning, or OPAL for short. So that's basically just your SI or tutoring session, but online. We also have learning skills resources and course-specific resources, so handouts and videos that you'll find online if you can't make it to our office. So that's just a rundown on the SARC services that we offer to students. Now let's delve into what are some of the common goals. Like I asked a couple of the people in the audience earlier before we got started why they're here and what brought them to a goal-setting workshop. So let's talk about some of those common goals that incoming students may have when they're here at UCF. So what are the most common goals? Can anyone think about it? What were some of your goals when you were here in your first semester at UCF? Yes? To make Dean's List, yes, that's a very good one. What about you?
Academic success.
Academic success, yes. Who else? You guys are very academic driven. I love it. So here are some of the common incoming student goals. So to make new friends. So of course you want to form your own network and community here at UCF. So that may be a student goal for you. continuing to earn good grades, so you were a high grade earner in high school or at your previous institution and you want to continue that in a bigger institution. Establish a direction for your life. So you're here in college for a reason, right? You're getting a degree for a reason. What does that mean to you? Where are you going with that? So that could be a goal for you. Connecting to your campus. So UCF is large, and we have a lot of buildings, we have a lot of offices, a lot of departments, and you kind of want to get affiliated with everything that UCF has to offer within your first semester here. And then, of course, you want to be unique. So you're going to join student organizations or get an on-campus job. You're going to do whatever you have to do to become a well-rounded individual, right, to build your resumes. So you want to be able to stand out by the time you graduate. So someone mentioned the dean's list, right? So that's a goal that you had when you were in your first semester. So that's a very common goal to have. So you want to either get president's list or dean's list. Of course, that may seem like a very difficult and daunting thing to do, right? So we're going to talk about some of the ways where we can achieve some of these goals. And some other UCF goals may be to avoid academic probation or to get out of academic probation. Now, it may seem like a negative thing, but this is just something to inform students of their need to alter habits. So one of the things I'm going to touch base on is that if things start to go wrong for you, don't get demotivated. Don't get deflated. And just find that motivation to change your ways and then get to where you want to be. And we can talk about how we can do that. So smartest goals I mentioned would be the best way to set up your goals, right? So it's one thing to say that you want academic success, but it's another thing to be very specific about what academic success means to you, right? Because academic success can mean something different from one person to another. So you want to be very specific with your goal. The more realistic your success is to you, the shorter your path is to achieving it. So an example of a non-specific goal would be, I want to do better in my class. Okay, but which class? And what does it mean to do better? Are you going to get one letter grade up, or are you going to get 1% up from the grade that you have, right? So you want to be very specific. Another thing is you want to avoid using words such as try and think or hope or maybe I should. No, the best way to set up your goals is to say, I will do this, right? So another thing you want to make sure of is to make your goals measurable. So what does that mean to you? Success. What does that mean? So in your class that you want to do better in, right? How are you going to measure your success? How are you going to measure that you're going to do better in that class? By saying the grade that you want to achieve in that class, right? So make sure that you have specific criteria that you're going to identify in your journey that'll help you, figure out when you should stop working towards your goal and reset, okay? So definitely make sure that your progress is measurable. So an example of a specific goal, as we mentioned before, is I will achieve a higher grade in maybe your math class, biology class, or psychology class. And a specific and measurable goal would be I will achieve a B+ or higher in my math class. Does that make sense? Okay. Action-oriented. So action-oriented goals means that your goals should be based on your actions and not those of others. So can anyone tell me what that may mean exactly? So what's an example of a non-action-oriented goal? It's a little tricky to think about, and not a lot of people think about this, but it's a very small detail. I want my professors to respect me. Okay, but how can you control that, right? So how can you accomplish that goal? You can't help whether or not your professors respect you, but what you can do is to adjust your attitudes and habits so that your professors may end up respecting you. Does that make sense? So I will complete all my assignments on time. I will participate in class. I will pass all my exams. I will go to my professor's office hours. And then maybe your professors will respect you and you'll accomplish that goal. Does that make sense? So make sure that the actions that you're going to take in your goal are reflected on what you're going to do and not what others are going to do. Another thing is you want to make sure that your goals are realistic, right? So a realistic goal is one where you see a clear path to achievement, and there are also going to be reasonable odds within which you'll get there, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to not reach for the stars, but what it means is that you just need to make sure that you can accomplish it in the time that you set for yourself. So an example of that is I will run a marathon tomorrow after I haven't really worked out or trained. That's not a really realistic goal. So a realistic goal is I will run a marathon a year from now after I train for 12 months, right? So that's a more realistic and attainable goal to set for yourself. Now, it is one thing also to set your goals, but for when? What is your time limit? So make sure that you have a deadline for all of the tasks and all of the actions that you're going to take to achieve your goal, and make sure that you have that long-term deadline to work towards. So no more of saying someday I'll achieve academic success, someday I'll get on Dean's List, or maybe one day I'll graduate. No, I'm going to graduate in the 4 years that I said I'm going to graduate in, right? So in the example that we were talking about before, I will achieve a B+ or higher in my math class by the end of this semester so that I can maintain my scholarship. Can you see how measurable, specific, action-oriented that goal is, and how timely and attainable this goal is? Now, we've talked about the SMART portion of SMARTest. Now we're going to move into EST. So the E would be exhibit your goals. What that means is that once you set your SMART goal, you want to write it down and put it in a place where you can see it all the time. Once you're constantly reminded of what you're working towards, you're more likely going to do it, right? So if you write it down on an index card or post-it note, post it, on your bedside table, your bathroom mirror even. An example of what I did when I was an undergraduate student, when I started to get demotivated, I wrote in all caps on a piece of paper, "I will graduate or die," by fall 2016. And so I gave myself an ultimatum, but I set a deadline. I was very specific. And I put it on my bedroom wall. So every morning, I woke up, I saw this really threatening message to myself that I will graduate in fall 2016. And then, lo and behold, I did everything I needed to do in order to do that. Moral of the story is I graduated in fall 2016. So it can be really helpful. It's a very small thing to do, but it's very helpful to just make your goals as visible as possible. So another thing you can do is seek support. Once you have a support system or just someone to talk to about your progress and your success, it might be easier to hold yourself accountable. Sometimes when we're the only person holding ourselves accountable, we can let ourselves down because we get distracted or we procrastinate. But maybe if we talk to a mentor, a professor, or a friend, they can remind us of that conversation we had with them about our goals, and then we can say, shoot, I haven't been working towards what I wanted to work towards. Let me get back on that so I don't look bad, right? So you want to make sure that you have that support system. Another reason why this is important is because it's very easy to fall off from following your goals because there are so many things that come in our path that can demotivate us, right? So make sure that you have someone that can give you a pep talk, whether that's your parents or a family member, a roommate, your cat. I talk to my cat a lot. She keeps me going. So definitely seek support. So the last letter in SMARTest goals would be target obstacles. So it's one thing that we follow through with all of these steps that we discussed so far, but another thing is we want to anticipate all of these obstacles that can arise, right? So once you anticipate any changes or obstacles that may come your way, you can plan accordingly to avoid those obstacles. Once you can plan and avoid those obstacles, the less likely you are to fall off from achieving your goals, right? So make sure that you plan accordingly. Think about what can come up, what can derail you, what can push your deadline back. So an example of that is if you have a deadline to complete a project in a particular class, right? Some things that may come up would be your team member drops out, or I don't know, another project comes up in a different class. You want to be able to plan so these things don't happen to you. So an example of an obstacle would be, there are hundreds of students in my math class, and a plan of attack would be, I will utilize individual tutoring in the math lab to get me the help that I need. So another thing is that you want to make sure that you have a plan of attack. So don't only plan for these things to happen, but also plan to combat these things. Have an action that you can do to oppose any obstacles that come along your way. Now it's your turn. So we talked about how to set these smartest goals, and you have 2 handouts in front of you. So the first one we're going to begin with is the SMART Goals and Game Plan handout. So if you can just take that out. What you're going to do is take a moment to reflect on what you want to accomplish by the end of this semester or this year. So think about your New Year's resolutions maybe, or just think about your academic goals for the semester. But come up with 3 long-term goals. They can be 2 academic, 1 personal, or they can be academic, personal, and professional. On your handout, you have space for 2, and the reason why there's spaces for 2 goals is because we're actually going to talk about it. So be prepared to share your answers. So the first part, Part A, is going to ask you what the possible benefits of achieving your goal is. So what are the advantages of you working towards this particular goal? Think about the possible disadvantages of you not accomplishing this goal. So if you don't graduate, what are the consequences? So think about those consequences. Then think about any anticipated challenges or obstacles that can come your way. And then think about the potential solutions and the resources that you can use to prevent this from happening. And then Part B would be the steps and timelines. So if there are smaller individual tasks that you can do to help you accomplish that goal, break it down and then set deadlines for those tasks. I'll give you a couple of minutes. But just take your time and fill this out, and we'll share what our SMART goals are. Yes?
Are we working on all of this, like for both goals right now?
We can do 1 goal.
Okay.
Whatever you feel comfortable doing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes? It can be academic, personal, or professional. Hello, are you here for the goal setting workshop? Yeah, here you go. So what we're doing right now is this handout right here. You're just going to fill out a goal for yourself,
Okay.
and just follow the steps.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So something to note, if you're familiar with SMART goals, is that sometimes the letters A and R may vary from source to source. So some resources may tell you that A is attainable, R is relevant. They're kind of similar and interchangeable, but I think it's important that we keep action-oriented in mind for A. No, it can be personal or professional. And for any of the online viewers, you can also find this handout on our SARC Online portal. So if you go to our website and SARC Online, you'll find this under Learning Skills Resources. Or if you wanted to find this later, you can find it there. All right, so we've had a couple of minutes, and I'm sure you guys have been able to at least fill out the steps, part A and B, for one goal. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, let's start on this side of the room. What is your long-term goal?
My long-term goal? Oh, I'm sorry. I filled out a short-term goal.
Oh, that's fine. You can share that too.
Okay. I want an A in my statistics class.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want it for achievement because I haven't gotten an A in a math class yet. So I
Okay.
just want it for achievement. And I know I didn't do so well in the first exam, so I'm setting goals. I want to study hard for the second exam and do practice problems every day leading up to it. And I set the due date as the day of the second exam. And I just continued the process up to the final. So that's my kind of game plan for the rest of the semester.
Okay.
For that course.
All right, sounds good. So tell me, audience, is that a SMART goal, do you think, that she set for herself, and a really good game plan? Very detailed, and she set deadlines, right? So it kind of matches up with SMART.
I
Yes.
would just suggest one other thing is that you set yourself a number of problems to do every day, or at least have done by the end of the week. Because I've learned that if you just say general things like I want to get problems done, you'll end up starting to slack off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy to say that we're going to do something. So an example of what this audience member was just discussing is that sometimes we'll say, okay, on Mondays from noon to 4, I'm going to go to the library and study. Okay, but what are you going to study for? How long are you going to study for that particular subject? What other subjects are you going to study for? So it's very important to be detailed with the time that you're going to use, and you won't find yourself slacking off or getting distracted. Very good. Thank you for sharing. Okay.
I set a goal to finish with the 3.0 by the end of the semester because I graduate. But so if I guess, do we share all the parts? I guess.
You can share part A if you want.
Okay. I want to finish 3.0 so I don't miss out on internship opportunity, and I anticipate a lot of just difficult tests since it's my last semester, and other classes getting in the way. And I plan to visit the professor's office hours more often, at least every week, so I can additionally go for letters of recommendation for grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And join more study groups every week, which I'm learning.
Okay. So what do you guys think? Is that a SMART goal that he set for himself? It's pretty specific. It's very specific. It's measurable. Definitely realistic. And the game plan that you set for yourself is also pretty attainable and action-oriented. So very good. What about you?
Well, right now, the goal that's pretty much taking up most of my time is that I want to achieve, at the very least, a B in all of my classes. And what I've done to do this is that I've taken advantage of the technology around me. I've used my calendar, and I've put down all the due dates that were there. And what I've done as well is that I've also used the reminders on my phone to essentially set due dates for when I want to have my assignments and whatnot done, and they're all before the due dates of the actual assignment or whatnot. The only issue I'm running into is for studying, but I'll get that solved at some point. And right now, so far I actually have A's in all my classes instead of just B's.
Okay, very good. Good job. I think that deserves a round of applause, right? Awesome. All right, great. So moving forward.
Yes, so my goal is by the end of the semester to maintain above an overall GPA of a 3.0. The reason for the goal is because I should be getting out of pending status for my major, so that's
Right.
great. But then also there's a minority grant with the education, so I definitely want to be able to be eligible for that. So that's definitely why that goal is set. With saying that, the barriers and challenges is myself, so just motivating myself and saying, yes, you can do your work, yes, you can do this on time.
Right.
But then also time management comes into place. A lot of things are happening this semester, so managing my time wisely.
Mhm.
Not only having fun, but then also planning out my work schedule, but then also my education schedule as well.
Okay.
So, yes.
So finding that happy balance and then still accomplishing what you want to accomplish.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Does that sound like a SMART goal? I think so. So very good. Thank you for sharing. What about you?
Well, my goal is to get an internship in the health service administration field at the end of the spring semester.
Okay.
And I will achieve that by finding internships and applying, and also networking and attending a lot of career fairs before the end of the spring semester.
Okay, so very good, very specific. You set deadlines for yourself. It's definitely a measurable goal. So what do you guys think? Is that a SMART goal?
Yeah.
Yep, we're all in agreement, so perfect. What about you?
Well, my long-term goal is to get straight A's for this semester. I'll do that by making sure that I plan everything way ahead of time and actually committing to what my planner will say. I'll make sure that I complete all of my assignments and making sure that I'm prepared for all the tests and quizzes.
Okay, awesome. Does that sound like a SMART goal to everybody? Yep, we're in agreement. What about you?
I'm a DJ, and one of my goals is to reach 5,000 likes on one of my mixes, which is called Anything is Possible. I have about 1,600 now, but I want to reach 5,000.
So what's your deadline?
By the end of summer week,
Okay.
I want it to reach there just so I can grow my following and to expand my network with DJing, so I can get more gigs in different places.
Okay, so does that sound like a SMART goal?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, my goal is also, it was like hers, to land an internship by the end of this semester.
Okay.
And to do that, I'll go online and look up jobs and places that are hiring for this internship and attend all the business fairs, meet all the business fairs, and go and be prepared with my resume. I've been getting my resume critiqued, so hopefully somebody picks me up. And possible benefits if this goal is achieved, it'll be easier for me to get a job in my field after I graduate if I get an internship before. Possible costs if goals not achieved, it'll be harder for me to get a job in my field because of lack of experience. The anticipated failures and challenges. Honestly, I would say like people who don't want to, actually give people a chance and they want more experience, but I feel like I'm my biggest obstacle. If I go and try to achieve that goal, it's going to happen. And potential solutions would just to keep filling out internship forms and applications.
Okay, very good. So does that sound like a SMART goal? Yes, yes, I think so. What about you?
My long-term goal is to land a career job within the next year. The benefits, possible benefits if goals is achieved, interns, just networking and basically staying organized. The cost if the goal is not achieved, I quit debt. Or moving back with my parents.
Sometimes we need to set extreme measures for ourselves to scare ourselves away from failure and towards success, so that works.
Right. Barriers or challenges and obstacles. Just basically working with different companies and understanding that usually companies have competition with one another. So trying not to be biased.
Okay.
I'm pretty hard on myself. That's one of the things I have to try to not be so hard on myself, as well as time management. Just basically having time for everything like school, work, and a personal life. And potential solutions, support, and resources. I want to just basically thoroughly research a company before I know this is what I want to do. Because a lot of times once you start working with the company, then you realize like this isn't really what I want. And you could have figured that out through research from before. So to save time, to thoroughly research the company, get to know the people in and out before I know this is the step that I want to do.
Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing. So what do you guys think? Is that a SMART goal as well?
Which career did you want to go to?
I like entertainment, so anything dealing with entertainment, either event planning or mass communications, radio, television, social media management, just anything with entertainment in general.
I would consider going into it and trying to decide specifically which entertainment you want to go into, because what I've noticed is that when you try to go look for a job, they require very specific things. Like, for example, there's this inventory thing for a company that I'm interested in. They required like a 4-year degree for a specific degree. degree, so you want to start basically prepping yourself for that job. That way, if you really ended up wanting it and you find out you don't meet the requirements, you're not disappointed.
Right.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. So that's why I like, when we share our goals in these workshops, right? Because sometimes we can offer some good advice or insights on some of the goals that we set. What about you?
I'm also trying to seek an internship by the end of the semester in accounting or finance.
Mm-hmm.
And I plan on going to the internship and co-op fair next week and the College of Business Invitational event,
Mm-hmm.
along with getting my resume further critiqued because of the Career Expo. I don't know, people were kind of weird at it. So I'm trying to get it critiqued again.
Okay.
See what's going on with that. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. What about you, right next door?
My goal is to find and join an organization on campus that interests me by the beginning of fall of 2018.
Okay.
And I'm planning to do that by meeting with someone about my interests.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to go to meetings for my top 3 organizations, and then I'll choose from there.
Okay. Sounds like a very good game plan. Does that sound like a smart goal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. What about you?
My goal is to graduate in spring 2019 with my bachelor's in biomed. The benefits if I make it is I can make it into med school.
Mm-hmm.
Possible cost is if I don't do it, it's more years at UCF. So like campus, I want to move up. Challenges would be the course load and having to study for all my classes.
Mm-hmm.
And solutions to that would be start tutoring and time management skills.
Okay. Thank you. Does that sound like a smart goal? It's very specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and timely. So thank you for sharing. What about you in the back?
Maintain a 3.5 or higher GPA.
Okay.
By the end of the semester, I would do that studying, time management, focusing, planning accordingly, what's due, so I don't fall back in my classes.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a very smart goal. Thank you for sharing. What about you?
To get A's in all my classes.
Okay.
And the benefits is that my GPA will look good, so I can get a better job and apply for other stuff, like scholarships and stuff.
Okay.
And cost is not being able to do that.
Right. Yes, of course. So what are your anticipated barriers and what do you plan to do to avoid them?
Balancing like life, like I have to like eat, so I have to go to the grocery store and study at the same time and sleep and
So learning how to manage your time more effectively?
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. What about you?
So my goal is short term, but it helps me in the long run of
Mhm.
my career here at school. I need to interview with my major department in order to actually get into the major that I want to get into. And so I've set myself up a timeline for that. I need to speak with the professor for the classes for that major, and I want to have that done within the next week and a half. Then I also want to speak with the person that's the head of the minor that I have to take with that major, in order to let them know that I'm interested in minoring in that program. And I'd like to have that done within the next month. And then once I've got all that set up, I'd like to get all of my information together. That way I'm ready for the interview and then set up and actually go to the interview by spring break.
Okay, great. So that sounds like a very smart goal. Do you guys agree? Yes. Thank you. What about you?
My long-term goal is I want to maintain my dean status and by getting at least A minuses in all my classes.
Mm-hmm.
And except I want to, wait, do you want me to go over part 8?
Yeah, just part A.
Like, benefits of this are kind of obvious, like it looks good on resumes
Mhm.
especially. If I don't do it, I'll kind of feel disappointed in myself because I know I could probably do better.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge is like I have some kind of challenging classes this semester. Like I'm not a math and science person, but that's what most of my classes are. So I know I have to work extra hard to keep these.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So as you can already tell, most of us have very similar goals, right? And so we've kind of shared like what some of our game plans are, and so maybe we can take some ideas from others and maybe adjust some of our to-do lists so that we can end up achieving the goals that we set. What about you?
Pass my anatomy class.
Mm-hmm.
Benefits, I need to graduate, so
Right. That's definitely a cost. Mm-hmm.
Like control the barriers. It's a lot of memorization. So just taking the time to actually like sit down
And memorize.
know the information, not just memorize it.
Right.
Just memorize it. You won't know it for all in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So know it.
Right.
With that, because of solutions, the rest of my classes aren't as challenging, so I will dedicate more of my time to
Okay.
classes.
All right. So does that sound like a SMART goal?
Yeah.
Everybody? Yes. Great. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for opening up and sharing your goals for this semester and this year. I hope you guys benefited from having this conversation. But now that you have your goals in mind and we've kind of detailed out what we want to do to accomplish them, I just wanted to share with you a different method of setting a game plan for yourself and also using time management to your benefit. So the second handout that I shared out is what's called the back planning method or the 3-list method. And you can find this template on our website, but you can also just do this on your own. So the first step is to define what your long-term goals or projects are. For example, make the president's list. The second step is to actually break them down into tasks, which we kind of sort of already did in the first handout, right? So we can set them into a weekly task list. So on a weekly basis, or maybe just for the next week, we can say that we want to get an A in our Bio 1 exam or maybe in our anatomy exam. And then step 3 would be to allocate the time to accomplish your weekly task list items, which will ultimately help you accomplish your long-term goals. Does that make sense? So it's kind of using time management and goal setting to help you accomplish things that you need to accomplish. So the last thing that I want to touch base on, now that we've set our goals and we've talked about how we can plan towards them, now it's a matter of staying on track with them and staying motivated, right? Because sometimes we can lose that motivation. So find a mantra and use it anytime you feel like you're feeling down or like you can't do what you need to do. So I like to say to myself, like Michael Scott does from The Office, I am Beyonce always, so I can do anything. You can also post motivational pictures for yourself on your phone background, inside of a textbook, your notebook. Whatever it is that you need to do to help you stay motivated, you do that. If it's a pep talk in the mirror for 5 minutes before you start your day, you can totally do that. No one's going to think you're crazy because you're by yourself. So when motivation is a problem, here are some things that you can keep in mind when you feel like nothing matters and you're always tired. Remember the following. So who you are is more valuable than what you do. Don't worry about or dwell on things that go wrong. So if you do come in, into contact with some of the obstacles that we mentioned, don't feel down on yourself. Like, things go wrong sometimes, and that's just life. Find ways to get out of that. See what you can do to make things better and to get you back on track. Give yourself time to change. So if you've found that maybe your GPA is not where you want it to be, don't be so hard on yourself. And we mentioned that, right? We're sometimes our own obstacle. So try to give yourself time to adjust and make the changes necessary to accomplish your goals. Imagine the worst that could happen. So if you don't get an A on your anatomy exam, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail out of college, never graduate, and then you're going to be a fry cook forever. Try to do that, because if you exaggerate a little bit, you'll start to laugh at yourself, and then you're like, oh no, I'm being ridiculous. All I need to do is actually sit down and study. And then you'll go ahead and do that. So that's just something to help you stay motivated as well. It's a weird tactic, but sometimes it works. Another thing you can do is just make sure that you start things on time. So don't let things pile up, because sometimes when we have too many things to do, we're like, I'm not going to do anything, right? So how often does that happen to you? Happens a lot, right? So to avoid that, just start things early. If you get something assigned to you, just do it, like Nike. So another thing is, don't compare yourself to others, right? So different people have different styles of working. People learn at different paces. So don't compare yourselves to other people in your classroom. If that person is a fast learner and you're just not, and you have to work a lot harder, that does not say anything about who you are as a person and a student. You're probably going to end up getting that same job that person is going to get. All right, so don't compare yourself to others. Pure motivation is rare, so no one gets out of bed and is like, yeah, let's carpe this diem, right? We all get out of bed and we're like, ugh, I need coffee. So make sure that you are not hard on yourself and you don't feel like, oh, I'm not like everyone else who's just, they're out there being go-getters and I'm not. No one is really naturally a go-getter when they wake up in the morning, right? So pure motivation is definitely rare. Reward yourself. So if you start to go through your to-do list and you're accomplishing things and you're just, you're doing the darn thing, make sure that you reward yourself. We humans thrive on incentives. What's an incentive of getting a job? Money. And so we're going to work, right? So think about that kind of concept and apply it to doing schoolwork. If you do all of your homework assignments in one night, say you're going to reward yourself by going to see a new movie with your friends. Something like that. Another thing is make lists. Completed tasks keep interest and motivation higher. So to-do lists are actually a really good way to keep yourself motivated. Once we see those things crossed off, it's kind of like a self-satisfaction, right? We're like, oh, yes, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm going to accomplish my goal. So do it. Fierce, power, like Leslie Knope. So that concludes the goal setting workshop. Does anyone have any questions? No. Yes.
So I mentioned earlier about how time management was the biggest thing, but my classes have a lot of work and a lot of things that I end up having to do, so I end up running out of time for allocating enough time to create some kind of study plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do it on the weekends because I have work.
Right.
How would you necessarily do it? 'Cause right now I'm working 6 hours every night, but
Mm-hmm.
it still isn't enough.
Well, I can actually go into another hour lecture about time management, actually, because that's actually a very common problem that students face. These are the evaluations, by the way, that I'm passing along. Just take one and pass it. But what I would recommend is take a look at some of the resources that we have on our website, because what we do on our learning skills resources on SARC Online is actually work out how you can allocate your time. So one thing to keep in mind is that the amount of hours that you want to dedicate to schoolwork should be 2 hours per credit hour that you're enrolled in. And if you're a STEM student, it's 3 hours per credit hour. That's kind of like a rule of thumb. And then you want to schedule in everything that you're doing, all of your commitments onto your calendar first, and then try to fit in all of the study time. So sometimes when we start building our schedule, we put in study times immediately. No, the first thing you want to do is put in all of your life commitments, whether it's class, going to work, social, family, that sort of thing. You put that in first, and then try to work around that schedule when it comes to studying and doing homework. So that's my biggest recommendation when it comes to time management. Well, other than that, thank you guys so much for paying attention and participating. I really appreciate it. And if you need anything else, you can always contact us by calling our main number. And other than that, have a great semester.
Thank you.
No problem. Have a great day.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How do you get in contact with other, I think you said learning skills consultants?
Yes. So we have, I think, about 3 or 4 learning specialists, and it's really by availability who you're scheduled with, and also sometimes by major. So what you would do is just call our main office number and say that you're interested in doing an LSE, and they can go ahead and schedule you in, and then also tell you who your appointment is with. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Are you able to take a picture with you?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.